After listening to Revered Swamiji and Manoharan's speech, it's really interesting to see so many of you still sitting here today. I was remembering a very famous English quote as I was listening to all of them. It's a wonderful quote. It says, if there are so many speakers in any audience, that audience have to listen to, the quote goes like this: listen to the first, tolerate the next, and throw out the rest. So me and Rhythm have a real challenge to follow up on such an extraordinary presentation by two people. But I feel they made my job easier too. Swamiji spoke about social protection and the need for what needs to be done. And Manoharan spoke about market failure. And both of these justify why government should exist. The state and state capacity is a subject of a lot of research has happened. Last 10 years of my life has been spent trying to understand it, research about it. And my journey began in the forest. And very soon I was a very disillusioned activist who thought the easiest approach to human development is blame the government. They have failed and therefore everything collapses. After some time I shifted the blame and said, this private sector, they are the screwed up people in this country. Extractive industry rapes the earth, destroys it, and so private sectors are sinners. The capitalists are all sinners. The government is mediocre, inefficient. Private sector is all absolutely untrustworthy, and we are the saviors of the world, the social sector. And I, for many years, believed that we could actually supplement the state and deliver services, goods and services the state could not. It took me 30 years to realize that at best we can supplant the state. The state is here to stay. Satyams may come, Satyams may go, but the government of India will remain. And that's when I started understanding how governments function. My journey took me to Harvard, took me to all places, started getting deeper into it. And I just want to walk you through the story of India's journey. And I was very happy when Manoharan said, do your job without looking for consequences. Mission Karmayogi is exactly that. And therefore, it's a good segue for me to start off. So 3 years ago, after COVID, the Honorable PM, all this is something you know. Unfortunately, I can't control slides. I don't show slides because I don't believe in them. And then Rajesh said, are you going to use slides? I actually had half the heart to send back. I don't believe in PowerPoints. Hopefully, I'll leave back some powerful points for all of you. But then I thought, okay, let me put something together. So we have done a lot. Is there? It's not there? Okay. So we have done a lot in our country. The 9-year journey, and I'm not here to advocate what all has been achieved, but significantly a lot has been achieved. We are an extraordinary nation. And you got to remember our history. We inherited the civil services, a colonially driven civil services, which even today, despite so many interventions that we have, I'm very glad that when the Prime Minister gave a call for Panch Pran, he said decolonize. And I'll tell you the DNA of decolonization, the colonization is so embedded in every one of us. If I don't speak in English, I'm not valued. And that's just significantly strong. We somehow have this embedded challenges that our country faces. We still call the deputy commissioners of many districts in some states as district collectors. What are they called collectors for? Because they were collecting taxes from subjects ruled by the British. They were not administering a district. There are only two functions. They were just regulating law and order and collecting taxes. And that is the bureaucracy we inherited. And 1947, the ICS as it was called, the joke going around was they're neither Indian nor civil nor a service. That's how they were known. But then, you should also appreciate the kind of people we had then. All the challenges, a nation of 350 million people, a nation where we had less than 2% of global GDP, and today it's close to 10%, Swamiji, global GDP. We are racing, we are $3.8 trillion, soon we'll be the 4th largest economy in the world, and that's not so important to me either, but I'll tell you the kind of economy that the government is conceiving India to become. And when we had to provide everything, I don't know how many people in this audience even remember things like modern bread. Yeah, most of us were sick those days. My mother would say, go buy bread and come. as though bread and milk will cure your fever. It was the paracetamol or Dolo 650 of those days, modern bread. And we would all go get that. It was made by the government of India. Everything, if you booked, my dad booked a Bajaj scooter, and with a celebration time when it was delivered, because it only took 13 years to get it. Right? That is how we were as a nation. When I became a doctor and came home and told my dad, oh, I'm a physician now, he said, great. I thought he was actually happy I became a doctor, first in the family. And then he said, now we can get our telephone in 6 months. We had a scheme called OIT Special, where if you're a physician, you get it in 6 months. OIT General is 10 years. And that was the India that we had. And we, as a nation, we had to understand that the country had to ensure it provided for citizens. So the bureaucracy were trained to be taking care of an administration which had a provider mindset. Give, give, give. And when you give, you don't respect the other side. They didn't know the Vivekananda quote, don't stand on a pedestal and say, here my poor man, take your 5 cents. But consider yourself privileged that you've been given an opportunity to serve. That was not the mantra. When you give, you control. And when you control, you tell the person how to lead his life. And that's how the nation's civil services were. 90s, when we privatized or deregulated or globalized, I was living in the forest with tribals, the poorest of the poor of this country, in situations that you can't even think. I was trying to imitate and live their lives. And I read the paper, and our newspapers used to come 3 days late to the forest. And suddenly we decided, a country announced a trickle-down economy. And I was trickling, waiting for it to trickle down. 20 years down the line, it's only beginning to trickle down now. Nothing trickled down. And suddenly the bureaucrats had to now become run a state which is a provisioning state. They had to understand how not to regulate, how to tell Bajaj make more scooters. Earlier they had to tell them you can't make that extra scooter and you will be punished. Today they had to tell them make. It's not easy. And today the Prime Minister talks of Jan Bhagidari, possibly a concept never tried anywhere in the world, because governments flourish by having 2 instruments in their hands, the instrument of agency and the instrument of control. And asking it to be ceded to citizens, it doesn't come easy. My first earlier book called I the Citizen, if I were to rewrite it again, today I would worry that we the citizens are not ready to participate in partnerships. Because we live in a political economy where we want everything free. If somebody can cook your food and feed it down your mouth, you'll be very happy. And in that, partnership doesn't come easy. So shifting the narrative of the revenues and subsidies and saying, let's together be a part of Team India and build a great new India that the Prime Minister talks about is not an easy journey for him. He felt COVID taught an extraordinary lesson. First time margins were blurred. Companies making cars were making masks. We might have had unopened oxygenators, but we had companies coming forward and donating those oxygenators. Charity's got a problem. Sometimes we overdo stuff, and that's a big challenge. As an NGO, I know we have 2 oxygen plants donated to our hospital, and in the fear of what will happen, we took both. And we are only able to use 1 now, because need for that kind of oxygen is gone. But for the first time, government, the public sector, the private sector, and civil society came together and demonstrated that we can work together. Today, the skill sets that government needs is no longer providing or provisioning. It needs to understand the spirit of partnership. And you can't run a government in the spirit of partnership if you don't build their capacities. What we are doing in the government, if I were to share with you the next 10-15 minutes, I can tell you private sector will be envious of what we are doing. And that is the magic I'm going to unpack for you. Mission Karmayogi was personally conceived by the Prime Minister, and he felt that this is what India's bureaucracy should be, because it needs to be future ready. India is going to be the future global leader, and we need to have that pride and that space where we can tell the world this is how you run your countries. And when he thought about it, he said, three very simple things he said when he gave us the mandate. The first thing was, he said, shifting mindset from thinking like I'm just a karmachari to behaving like a karmayogi. Unpacking karma yoga is not easy, but we had to start somewhere. I felt when I took charge that even thinking you're a karmachari is good enough. I'm taking my salary, let me do my damn job. That itself is very good for this nation. But then he said that's not enough. We want them to behave like a Karmayogi, expect nothing in return, but build a great nation. Now it works well for the Prime Minister, but working for 20 million civil servants of the government of India and 20 more million of all the governments put together in this country is not going to be easy. How do you shift mindsets of these people who are used to mediocrity, who are used to not being held accountable, and who are used to just getting away with whatever inefficiencies they had in the system? Suddenly you're telling them, no, you can do a damn good job, let's get down to do it. So we needed to unpack this a bit. The second thing he said is people are used to a rule-based approach. You walk into a government office, they'll tell you why this can't be done, why that can't be done, how you cannot do this. He said, rules are important, but transcending the approach from a rule-based thinking to understanding I have a role to play. My role is to build this nation. I use rules to play my role. And that's a huge ask in a real organizational setup. And the third, he said, is how do you get our people to understand, if you want to be future ready, you got to be a lifelong learner. And he said, if you want to really build a future ready nation, you got to be lifelong learners. So we shifted the thinking and said, earlier, people had to actually learn how to do their work. Today we say your only work is to keep learning. And that's a big shift in Government of India. And we run the world's largest learning management system, which is no system in the world can match what we have today called Karmayogi Bharat. It's a separate Section 8 company, which has got a list of, I'll talk a little while from now about what it is. So to unpack this, we said, what do you build capacities for? Why do you need capacity? I've already explained. But what do you build it for? Capacity for what? To idle, to sit at home, to cook, make a good meal? Capacity for what was the first question. And we decided to operate, and I created an acronym called WWW. The first W is understanding what is our work. What does public administration even mean today? Public good definition has changed. We had vaccines which are given free. And then we had vaccines for which giving the vaccine you have to pay for 100 rupees to the government paid the private sector. And then we said those who can afford it can take it at 1,000 rupees. So we altered the definition of what is a public good. The state exists to ensure public good to its citizens. Definition of public good itself is so dynamic today around the world, not just here. We have SBI, we also have to regulate ICICI. We run Air India for some time, then we sell it. But we still have to regulate the newly sold out Air India also. It's a very complex operation, running a state. And I realized it when I got inside. We are one of the most cheapest governments in the world. Many of you may not even be aware of this. And defining work, keeping the future in mind is so difficult. Thankfully, we have a Prime Minister who's an extraordinary visionary. He gave us a very simple mandate and said, don't worry about Amrit Kal right now. That's 25 years. The first thing he said was, how do you take India and build an inclusive $5 trillion economy? Where the Antyodaya concept, the last man down the street, is part of the economic engine, either in the production cycle or at least in the redistribution network. Second, Atmanirbharata is not just a slogan. Atmanirbharata is a much deeper opportunity for us to throw away this colonial mindset of I am not capable. The sense of pride you feel when he addresses the US Congress is part of that Atmanirbharata too. Or the sense of pride you feel when you travel around the world and today say India and they know where it is. Right? 40 years ago when I used to travel and give lectures in the US, I had actually showed the map and said, this is India, this is where I come from, Karnataka. And they never figure it out. Today you don't have to say anything. Bangalore is actually a word in the American dictionary, right? And that's how we have moved on. And third, Atmanirbharata is not as an economic principle of production, but in the way we think, in the way we ideate. Because like our earlier speakers said, if you don't learn from your past, you'll never be able to build a great future. Third, he said ease of living, ease of doing business. Many of you here may not agree. It's a learning journey. Overnight, and Indians are in a hurry. Press a button, tomorrow everything should change. A lot of friends call me and say, you've been there 2 years, we're still seeing the same things. I know some questions have come. What changes happened? Impact will be felt by citizens. Impact is not when we have press conferences or we have a program called Karmayogi Police. The Delhi, all the union territory, because the government of India doesn't have a lot of citizen footprint, right? We only have to work through structures of the federal government. Delhi police have been trained just before the G20 event, and they'll be one of the most citizen-friendly polices, not just in this country, in the world itself. And the entire spirit of Bhagavad Gita's Karmayogi is the training program for them. And they are going to be the people who are going to receive all the foreign guests and all that that's going to happen. I'm saying this not out of anything. I'm saying this out of absolute pride and gloating pride, actually, because there's a lot of changes that are happening and we have to celebrate changes. We as a nation are very tuned to look at the dark clouds above. I think we as Indians should get the DNA to start looking at the silver lining, however small it is. And each of us contribute to expand that silver lining. The dark cloud gets crowded out at some point of time. That much we owe to the future. So understanding work meant $5 trillion economy, inclusive economy, ease of living, including ease of doing business. Setting up a company is possibly easy. I know closing down a company is much more challenging. And we at least know the problems today, and we're solving it. Fourth is, Prime Minister announced in a talk a month ago, the citizen is my new center of everything. He is a new mantra. Citizen-centric governance is here to stay. And that is going to happen. And the last is deploying emerging technologies. We cannot imagine the technologies that are getting deployed. I'm really saddened by the fact that private sector is not ready to capitalize on tools like Gati Shakti and the national infrastructure pipeline. But it's not the time to look at who's better or who's bad. It's time to see how do we synergize and work together. Samaj, Sarkar, Bazaar is the only way you can solve the problem, because we want to build a life economy based on the principle of life that the Prime Minister talks about, which is no longer going to be shareholders. It's going to be stakeholders. It's a new for-benefit economy where every participant gets the benefit of this new economy that we're going to create. And hopefully it'll happen. It takes time. So these 5 things were defined as work. Then we looked at the workplace. In the workplace, the government of India for the first time has had an HR audit done. So a lot of things, a lot of learnings, because we have the outside, we never understand the government. It's easy to criticize it when you don't understand. So understanding the workplace. Why shouldn't a government office look like a corporate entity? And I could challenge any of you, just walk into my capacity building commission and you'll actually feel proud that it's a damn good office. Why shouldn't the Indian Parliament be what it is today? Why shouldn't Central Vista happen? And say every single government office on Kartavya Path on the places will be the best in the world. And we are trying to do that. And we should take pride in all these things. Last is the work person. And when we talk of the work person, we have actually mapped these 3.2 million people. Mapped them ministry-wise. 93 ministries and a few attached offices. We just started. Government of India is a big operation. In that, we have developed capacity building plans for every single ministry, where every single employee is mapped. For what? His roles have been defined. We are now looking at each individual, how does he contribute to his division in the government? How does his division contribute to the ministry? How does the ministry contribute to the government of India's larger vision the Prime Minister has set? And we measure them, map their roles, map the functions they do, the activities that enables them to deliver on their functions, and every single competency he needs to do those activities. The kind of micro detailing that has been done, I don't think anybody can even envisage the kind of work that has happened. His behavioral competencies to transition from a karmachari to a karmayogi have been mapped. The deficits we know. His functional competencies, if you're a joint secretary, whichever ministry you're joint secretary of, you deliver the same, you need the same functional competencies. His domain competencies. So we are setting standards. We have set learning standards for institutions to give us courses. So a lot of changes happening. There are discussion hubs, there are career hubs. A lot of functional changes have happened. Maybe in the days to come, structural changes in the bureaucracy will also start. And I can tell you the kind of journey that is there. People are very enthused by public service when they join. Somehow the system has forgotten how to keep them enthused for 30 years. A lot of structural barriers, functional barriers, a lot of challenges, a lot of incentives, non-incentives are there. It's not easy to still stay focused and deliver to the state. A lot of technological changes are happening. Citizens are becoming very demanding. In all this complexity, that fellow is supposed to stay motivated. But I will have to end with one program that we did. I'm sure most of the people sitting in this room, when was the last time you even took a train journey? Anybody who took a train journey in the last 3 months? Last 1 month? See, so many answers. If you're taking a train journey and there's a TTE talking to a person to allot a berth and the person pays 50 rupees to him, what is the first thought that you get? Be honest, what's the first thought? You see a transaction happening between a TTE and a person asking for a berth, and the person is giving 50 rupees. What's the first thought you get? Corruption. That's a sad part of India's public service. How many of you remember in the last 1 week traveling in a public bus or meeting a policeman doing his job and walking up to him and saying, "Thank you for your service"? Have any of you done it even? Right? We say it's their damn job. Well, it's your job is also to run your companies. It's his job to run the country. How many of us go thank him? How many of you walk down a bus? The fellow's bad driver, you will say, "Hey," in Kannada we say, "Mane helbut bandilwa," and all that. Right? But how many of us will walking down say, "Thank you for bringing me safely to my destination"? We don't. Public service is a thankless job because we, the citizens, don't thank them for it. It's time to change that. You want them to perform, start with appreciation. Then demand accountability. A lot of things will happen. Change is happening quietly. It is our clouding of vision. You're all standing in front of a mirror and crying, "I can't see my image." But remember, all that it needs is to wipe that mirror clean. Mission Karmayogi is wiping that mirror for citizens. And hopefully you'll all join this revolution by not saying we and they, but that saying that together we can actually build a great country. And that is the Team India for all our dreams. Thank you.